On the last night of July, in a building in Portland with 19,959 people inside it, a franchise record, Caitlin Clark finished with 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. A triple-double, the fourth of her career. That ties her with Sabrina Ionescu for the third most in the history of the league. Her team won by 14. It was their fifth win in a row. And here is the part that doesn't fit. On that same night, the markets that priced the Most Valuable Player award gave Caitlin Clark about a 7% chance of winning it. 7. Not because she's playing badly. She is playing the best basketball of her professional life. This is the story of how a player can be this good and this far down the list at the same time, and of whether the list is wrong, or she is. To understand what's happening now, you have to go back to the season everyone would rather forget. 2025, the year Caitlin Clark's body stopped answering. It started in training camp. A left quad. Small thing, they said. 4 games into the season, the same quad went again. This time a sprain. She sat, she came back. A month later, a left groin sprain. She sat again. Then, less than a month after that, the right groin. Not the same leg, the other one. That is the pattern that frightens medical staff. It isn't one injury. It's a body compensating for an injury and then breaking somewhere new. By the end of it, she had missed 31 of 44 games. Read that again. She played 13. And here's what made that different from any other star's injury year. The season she arrived, ESPN's WNBA broadcasts jumped from an average of about 394,000 viewers to 1.2 million. Indiana's home crowds went from roughly 4,000 a night to 17,000. So when she went to the bench in 2025, it wasn't one roster spot that emptied. It was arenas, ratings windows, and a national conversation. And when she did play, you could see her managing it. The pull-up threes from 30 feet were still there. The burst wasn't. She called it, in her own word, incredibly frustrating. What nobody could tell her was whether it was bad luck or the beginning of a career shaped by the training room. So the entire offseason became one question. Fix the body. Not add a move. Not fix the jumper. Fix the body. Indiana rebuilt her preparation from the ground up. Load managed before the load. Strength work aimed at the exact chain that had failed twice. Hip, groin, quad. The internal theory was the hopeful one. That 2025 was bad luck compounding, one injury manufacturing the next, rather than a structural flaw that follows a player for a decade. Then the season started. And on May 20th, she missed a game against Portland. Her back. In June against Phoenix, she walked off the floor in the middle of a game and did not come back. Her back again. 2 scares, 6 weeks apart. In the one season, she was supposed to prove she could stay upright. If you were building a case against her, that was your evidence, and it was fresh. Here's what the case left out. She kept playing. Through the middle of the summer, she was putting up 21 points and 8 assists a night for a team climbing the Eastern Conference. That is a star's production. It just wasn't a story. Availability is invisible until it disappears. And then it's the only thing anyone talks about. And then her own league told her what it thought of her. All-star voting. 3 groups vote. The fans, the media, and the players themselves. The fans put Caitlin Clark second among every guard in the league. The media put her third. Her fellow professionals ranked her 11th. 11th among guards. 1 year earlier, the same vote had her 9th. So she didn't hold steady in the eyes of her peers. She fell. Now the honest version, because this gets sold dishonestly in both directions. This is not a league-wide conspiracy. Only 85 of 180 players actually returned a ballot. Each one picked 4 guards. It's a small sample cast quickly by people competing against her for money, for minutes, and for attention. Candace Parker, a 3-time champion, called the 11th place finish crazy, and she's entitled to. But it isn't evidence of a plot. It's evidence of a gap, because the weighted vote made her a starter anyway. And that is the shape of this whole season inside one ballot. The public says, superstar. The press says near the top. The professionals in the room say 11th. 3 scoreboards, 1 player, 3 different answers. And that's before the odds makers take their turn. The All-Star break came and went, and something changed in Indiana. On July 28th, Seattle came in. Clark scored 32 and handed out 7 assists, and the Fever won. 3 nights later, they won again. And again. What made it different wasn't her scoring. It was the shape of the offense around her. Indiana started scoring 100 points, and then didn't stop. 5 games in a row, over 100. No team in the history of the WNBA had ever done that. Not the Aces at their most brutal. Not the Lynx. Nobody. And that is the thing a great point guard does that a box score buries. It isn't the 21 a night. It's Kelsey Mitchell getting cleaner looks than she has any right to. It's Aliyah Boston catching the ball already turned toward the rim. It's Sophie Cunningham standing in a corner nobody has time to close out to. Because 2 defenders leave with Clark every time she crosses half court, and somewhere on that floor, one of her teammates is standing completely alone. Over that stretch, Indiana won 9 of 11 and moved to the top of the Eastern Conference. The player they ranked 11th was, in that moment, running the highest scoring stretch any offense in league history had ever run. And the MVP number still hadn't moved. But before you hand her the whole thing, here is the hardest fact in this story, and it cuts directly against her. In 2025, with Caitlin Clark ruled out for the rest of the year, the Indiana Fever went to the WNBA semifinals anyway. Their first semifinal since 2015. 10 years. They got there by beating Atlanta in a deciding game 3, 87-85, on a go-ahead basket by Aliyah Boston with 7.5 seconds left, and a steal by Lexi Hull on the inbound to end it. Kelsey Mitchell scored 24 that night. Boston had 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists, and then they took the Las Vegas Aces, the team that went on to win the championship, to the edge in the semifinals, without her. So the skeptic's case is not stupid, and it isn't jealousy. It's this: that roster was already good. Boston is a former Rookie of the Year and an All-Star center. Mitchell has been scoring in this league for years. Stephanie White's team defended and rebounded and won a playoff series while its supposed franchise player watched in street clothes. If they can do that without her, the argument goes, how much of this is actually her? That is the real question underneath the 11th place vote, and it deserves a real answer. Here it is. That team at full strength in the playoffs without Clark could not do the thing this team just did for 5 straight games. Nobody in the history of the league could. And this is where the argument stops being about basketball, because the ground underneath that ballot has moved. Start with what one economist's analysis estimated, that Caitlin Clark alone accounted for somewhere around a quarter of all economic activity in the WNBA in a single season. Merchandise, tickets, television, one player, a quarter of a league. Then look at what the league signed. An 11-year media rights deal worth about $2.2 billion, starting with this season, splitting games across Disney, NBC, and Amazon. That is roughly $200 million a year, against the $50 million a year the old deal paid. More than triple. And then look at what that money did to the people voting. Under the new collective bargaining agreement, team salary caps are reported to rise from around $1.5 million to about $7 million, with average salaries climbing past $580,000. Every player who filled out that All-Star ballot is being paid out of a pot that got dramatically bigger during the 2 years Caitlin Clark has been in the league. That does not automatically make her the most valuable player on the floor. Value in an MVP vote is supposed to mean basketball, and it should, but it does explain why this particular ranking detonates every single time. Nobody is arguing about 11th. They're arguing about what the league owes the person who filled the building. Which brings us back to Portland. July 31st, 19,959 people in a building for a franchise in its opening years. An attendance record set by the visiting guard. Final score: Indiana 112, Portland 98. The fifth straight game the Fever cleared 100 points. And the line: 26, 10, and 10. The rebounds are the tell. A season high. That is not a guard hunting a stat line. That's a 6-foot guard going into traffic on a night her team was already comfortably ahead. First triple-double of the season. Fourth of her career. Level with Sabrina Ionescu, and behind only 2 players in the entire history of the league. She is 24 years old. So if you watched only that night, the story is very simple. Best player on the floor. Best stretch of her life. Team on top of its conference. History in the box score. And then you look at the award. And it belongs to someone else, and it isn't close, and here is the uncomfortable part. The people who think that are not idiots. Because A'ja Wilson is having the season A'ja Wilson is having. 26 points a game. 2 blocks. Better than a steal and a half. She is a 4-time most valuable player, the only player who has ever won it 4 times. And she is chasing a 5th that no one in this league's history has held. Las Vegas sits 2nd in the entire WNBA. Before the season, 60% of the general managers surveyed picked her. The betting markets have her somewhere around 70%, with Clark at 7. That is not a snub. That is a lead. And underneath it, there's a harder number. Voters count games played. Clark missed 31 of them last year and has already lost time this year to her back. Wilson has been on the floor. At that level, for 4 consecutive seasons. In an award where availability is quietly treated as a virtue, the player who has never given anyone a reason to worry carries a structural advantage over the player who has. You can believe Caitlin Clark is the most important figure in the sport, the bigger draw, the harder problem to game plan for, the reason the money changed. And still put A'ja Wilson at the top of your ballot and be completely defensible. Both of those things are true at once. That is what makes this an argument instead of an outrage. So here's where it actually lands. There are 2 different questions on this table, and almost everybody shouting about it is answering whichever one they prefer. The first: who has been the best player in this league this season? That has a defensible answer, and her name is A'ja Wilson. The second: what is Caitlin Clark at 24, coming off a year her own body took away from her? And the honest answer to that one is that she is playing better than she ever has, running the highest scoring stretch any offense has ever run, sitting level with Ionescu for 3rd most triple-doubles in league history, and being ranked 11th by her colleagues and 7% by the market while she does it. One of those 2 things is going to look ridiculous in 5 years. Either the ranking or the hype. Awards are a snapshot. Careers are the film. So I'll hand you the argument. If Caitlin Clark finishes this season at this level and doesn't draw a serious most valuable player vote, does that tell you something about her? Or about the ballot? Say it in the comments and be specific. Give me a stat, not a feeling. And subscribe, because when those votes are published at the end of the season, we're reading them on camera. And one of us is going to be wrong.